it took that entire team most of a year to put together our annual stewardship reports because of the really manual process we had, and because of just the fact that we didn't really have many processes in place at the time. So this kind of physically represents all these different systems coming together and how we just needed to get rid of them. And there was a point when we were like, we need to find something else to help us with this, because it's just too onerous of a process. There's too many places where mistakes can get made in what we're doing. And that's when we came to Mythos. I don't have to go running to Mark and say, can you regenerate this packet for me? I can just press the button and it makes the changes like magic. They look much more polished than they used to look, because we give our InDesign files directly to Mythos, where they build the templates into the system, so they look like they actually came out of InDesign, even though we're not going into InDesign and like formatting things in there anymore. The system is really doing that for us. My name is Katie LeClaire. I'm the Director of Stewardship and Donor Recognition at Brown University. I've been there for the last 4.5 years, and before that I was at Brandeis University, where I was in donor relations also for 8.5 years before then. And my current role, I oversee our entire stewardship reporting, our entire stewardship team, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in the next couple slides.
And I'm Rob Hoffines. I'm the head of product for Mythos, so I lead our product development, make sure we're continuing to build the platform to serve stewardship and donor relations.
Today we're going to share with you a couple of different things we've done to streamline our stewardship reporting, and some ways that we've identified refinements in our processes that hopefully that can help you in what you're thinking about at your own institutions, and things that you can take back with you. And also talk about how we've really, because of the efficiencies we've built in our workflows, that we've been able to free up time for some of our other priorities that our team is now taking on. I'm going to start with a little bit of background about how we used to do our stewardship reporting at Brown, to give you the context for why we really needed to move to Mythos. And then we'll both go through the different parts of the Mythos platform for you to get an idea of what it looks like. So first, this to kind of give you an idea of what our team structure looks like at Brown. There's 10 employees on the stewardship team, and we live within donor relations, which also has a gift compliance team and an events team. Our biggest focus of the year is putting out our stewardship reports, our annual stewardship reports. But we also have a strategic stewardship team, where we have an individual stewardship program and looking at strategic audiences. And we now have donor recognition under us as well, where we have physical naming spaces on campus, but also looking at aligning our recognition societies in better ways. We have 10 people now, but when I started, it was more like, well, there was about 3 people on the team with about 7 positions, and we rehired when I first started. But with those 7 positions, when they were filled, it took that entire team most of a year to put together our annual stewardship reports, because of the really manual process we had, and because of just the fact that we didn't really have many processes in place at the time. This is what our packet looked like the first year that I came into Brown. The way we do our reporting is we do all of our reporting at one time in the year. So we do a comprehensive report. I know some of you may do like scholarships at one time of the year, professorships at one time of the year, et cetera. We do all of those things all at once, and we deliver that with our financial reports sometime in the fall, this year in November. So there's all different types of fund types and report types that we're putting in our packets, and it's really dependent on who the donor is. So every single packet is a completely unique thing, depending on who the donor is, what they've given to. One person might have a professorship and a program support fund within their packet. Another might just have scholarships. So it makes it so that every single thing is personalized and unique to each person, but it also makes it very complicated when you're putting that together, because we do this for about 2,100 households every year. In our pre-Mythos process, we were surveying, because we have to collect all this content from across different areas at the university. We were surveying in different platforms. So we were using Google Forms, Qualtrics, emails, just trying to collect all this content. And all that information lived at different places. We were also editing in Word. So we go through a series of editing processes to make sure the reports look right when they go out to the donors. We were doing that all in Word, moving them in different folder systems from first reviewer, second reviewer, et cetera. And then they would be sending emails to each other saying like, these are ready for you to review. So that just added many layers of complications with that workflow process, just like the time it takes to send, it seems little, but the time it takes to send an email over and over again to make sure things are moving along. And not to mention that, this is what it looked like, and that's because we had to do our templates within Word, because we were just we were editing everything in there, and we kind of had to manage all the formatting within the Word document. We weren't in InDesign or anything like that. Before I came to Brown, it was a completely, I'm glad you guys all laughed. Yes, exactly. It was a completely physical process. So this was pre-COVID when we were printing everything out. Every single report was printed out. We had physical, and it sounds like many of you may have gone through the same experience. You had physical filing cabinets with donor packets, donor folders, and we were going through, or they were going through, I wasn't there yet, but they were going through and filing them within those filing cabinets. Because of COVID and because we moved to a completely remote work environment, we had to move digitally. So we built this whole process in the digital environment where we were pulling everything together, not in a physical form anymore. That meant we had to produce all of our reports digitally. And because of the level of personalization we were putting in them, we were doing things like the example shown here, where we had cover letters with salutations in them, and then cover pages with the donor name in them. And I learned that you could put code in the background of a Word document to run a mail merge so that it actually created documents that were named by donor. But doing that meant running it on my computer and then leaving and coming back a couple hours later to make sure that it ran through correctly. So each part of that process was really manual, even though we did move to this digital process. My manager, who some of you may know, Mark Lanham, he helped us build the Access database that we used to pull together to digitally collate our packets so we could do it remotely. That meant he built it in Access, which none of the rest of us knew what or how that worked. It created an Excel sheet for every single donor packet, and the Excel sheet would tell the system where that report is within these folder structures, and it would pull all those reports together and collate the thing. Which was great. It was great for what it needed to be in 2020 when we were just doing this all on the fly. But it meant that any single time that we had an edit on a report or like something came in the wrong order, we'd have to make the edit in the report, go to Mark and say, can you regenerate that one packet or that group of packets, wait for him to have time in his schedule to do it, and then that's how the edits could be made. Or this next slide actually will show you what the Excel sheet looked like. And if things needed to be reordered in this, we'd have to, Jacqueline's laughing because she remembers this so vividly. We'd have to move them around and then resave it, and again, go back to Mark and say, can you rerun those packets and make sure they're all pulling together. So because of this, there was just so many different things, different manual processes that we were doing in the background. And it was about on 2,000 funds, and as I said, that's about 2,100 households that we're reporting out on. It was really important to us to personalize and continue doing this individualization and continue personalizing as much as we could, because that's what our donors expected and what our fundraisers expected, to be honest. And we also needed to accommodate for a lot of exceptions that had been put in the process along the way, which was really difficult when you're doing so many at such a scale. So this kind of physically represents all these different systems coming together and how we just needed to get rid of them. And there was a point when we were like, we need to find something else to help us with this because it's just too onerous of a process. There's too many places where mistakes can get made in what we're doing. And that's when we came to Mythos.
And that is why we created Mythos, all of that, yeah. So I'm just gonna do a brief overview, and then Katie and I are going to kind of go back and forth on each of these capabilities that I'm going to talk about. So those being helping you collect all this content and all these stories that you want to share with your donors. We have tools that streamline just that part of the process. I mean, the overall platform is about streamlining, but it does that just in that part. All of that content gets tagged automatically based on rules that you apply. So those tags are things like fund IDs to align the stories to the donors when you go to publish. All of that content flows into, and I think I'm supposed to be clicking here, all that content flows into our, what we call our story manager, which is a library of all of that. So you can search it. It's got workflow tools to help you manage it, get it ready for publishing. You can also author content directly in there, so you don't just have to use the surveys to get your content in. And then we have publishing tools for both PDFs and websites. And we use a templating system that we actually developed ourselves starting 10 years ago, something like that, to weave all of this together off of your data. So you upload your donor data, and it responds and adapts to variable length content off of all that data about those donors to pull in the right stories and produce both the narrative but also the financial report. part of their reports. And then sharing-wise, we've got integrated email, integrated texting. We also offer print and direct mail services as part of that, so we have direct mail capabilities out of the platform. And through our sites technology, which I'll talk more at the end, because Katie and her team are not using that yet, you can email those out and then get analytics on all that. So I'll come back to that a little bit later. But the key of all of this, of course, is the data, right? We started with a data-first approach with Mythos, so we recognized very early that everyone's got different data, different numbers of sources of data, different formats. Mythos is data agnostic, which just means that you drop your data in Mythos and it takes it and does what it needs to do. So you don't have to do a lot of data manipulation, flattening, or anything like that. Mythos will do that for you. So we've made it very easy in that way, but we can also connect to those systems when and where it makes sense to pull that data in dynamically. So we've got lots of options there. And Katie is going to talk about her surveys.
Sure. We do all of our surveying in Mythos now. So as an example, you'll see this is a scholarship recipient survey. When we go to start a survey, we upload our information to the background so that the student names, their hometown, major can all be uploaded into the survey. And we actually ask them as part of the survey, is this information still correct, in case they change their major or their class year they may have changed. Everything within the survey that we're putting in here is customized to what we want. So like it looks like it's coming from Brown. This language up front is something that we change whenever we need to. Because I think as many of you are, you're probably thinking about like what are the best ways to ask questions, especially of like recipients like students. So that changes for us too, and sometimes we might change those questions that are within surveys. You can see that this continues on the other side, that these are some more of the fields that we can customize to however we want, how many questions, the length that we want to do it on. We also, when we're uploading that recipient information on the back end, we include the student single sign-on. So our students sign into the single sign-on to get into their survey, and it actually maps everything out within Mythos so that we know like which student is answering which survey, and like it ultimately connects it to what fund that report is going with. So that all of that gets uploaded as part of creating the survey and part of that process. We email these out directly through Mythos as well. Yes?
When a student fills it out, can they come back and finish it, or is it multiple like entries?
Yep, so through the single sign-on, they have the option to save their progress. Okay. And then you can see that progress in what we call the survey manager. So you can send follow-up emails to remind them. You can also set reminder emails, like whatever schedule you want, and then once they submit, those stop, of course. So yeah.
Thank you, I should have known that, because I could see all the in-progress surveys, and I know they can get back in there. We also use this for our program support funds. So about 40% of the funds we're reporting on live out in departments across the university, and there's about 70 departments we're working with, and so we send the survey out to all those departments. And something that's really nice in Mythos is that we're able to give them some data about the funds that they're answering questions on, so we can tell them what's the fund purpose, that like this is how you should be spending this fund, and then we're able to tell them what kind of reporting requirements there are for the fund. So we call this the stewardship note, and it says like you have to, as part of the report, you have to share what the student's name and project title is, so that they can see that right at the top when they're answering the survey. So that's been really helpful for us. They can also collaborate with others within the system. So if they need to share with like a department chair and have the department chair go through and review their survey responses, they can share the link directly with them and they can collaborate together. And then they have this homepage where they can see all of the different funds that they're working on and their progress with them, so they can just track where they are with responding to our survey. And again, we send this directly out through Mythos in the email, so they get the email directly through the Mythos platform. We can customize the email text, whatever we want to put in there to share out with them as well.
Hold on, I'm a little confused.
Go ahead.
The information that you put out to the departments,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to basically give them here as a list of your scholarship funds
Mm-hmm.
with living donors
Mm-hmm.
that you want to report on, and then they just report one by one.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is the list there where they just click on that one fund, and then they fill out the information, click on the second fund. Yeah. I'm
So-
curious visually how that's done.
Yeah, so we don't have a picture of it here, but I'm sure we could
Yeah.
share something with it. But if you click on one of these, it'll take you to the survey for that specific fund, and you'll answer each of the questions for that specific fund, or you can skip that one if you want to go back to it. And there's a button at the top, so you can like navigate between the different surveys on here, and they can go from one to the next, either that way, or they can go back to the home screen and click on each of these individually to get to the specific survey for that fund.
And they can even, through that survey, that multi-response survey, as we call it, experience, they can carry over content very easily. So if if there's common answers, they have an easy way to kind of pull those over. And all of that is sort of a highlight of all this is that we've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to respond so that you get more stories, right? That's the whole goal here. So that's just an example of that. And that survey manager that I just mentioned a moment ago, this gives you the ability, as you can see here, to track emails, sort of how many you've sent. This is a sample site, so I think oh, yeah.
No, this is ours.
Okay.
Which one are you looking at?
Yeah.
It was confusing.
Yeah, I don't know why it's 0, but there's how many you've sent, how many have opened, how many have clicked, and then that sort of stream continues with their response progress. And each of these are kind of filters, so you can click in, and if you want to do mass follow-up based on that status, you can do that. And what else was I going to mention? You can even, so sometimes we hear that people will email stories or email fund use information to you. You can even go into the surveys and impersonate people and get that in. And that's helpful because then you can take advantage of the tagging system that happens when you submit through the surveys. Yeah.
Was there another? Yeah, okay. go ahead.
Just a quick question. We just started utilizing Mythos, and so I'm really deep in this part of it. For that page that you were just on, was that email, or where it showed all of their surveys, was that manually made by you, where it shows this, or is this, where does this page live for them? So I've had questions of, I have multiple surveys, how do I know where to find all of those? Where does that live?
So it's an option when you set up the survey to, as they go through the first one, you can redirect them to this page.
Okay.
You have options kind of where they go after submission of a survey, and this is one of those. So
Okay.
that keeps them on track. And then they see this, and obviously these are all unstarted, but it would show in progress or submitted based on each. Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned story tags. We just want to highlight this because it's such an important part of how Mythos does what it does for you. And the highlights are, first of all, these are based on rules that you set. So it starts with surveys, sort of that data foundation I talked about before starts with surveys, and you're uploading data about those recipients or those deans or whoever it is that you're surveying. And those rules apply these tags, and it can be off of that data that you have about them. So if you know about the scholarship that the student received, you can apply that fund ID. It can also be based off of answers to questions. So if you don't have the data about them, if you don't know the school they're in or the major or something like that, and you want to ask that, you can apply that. And what these tags do are a number of things here. First of all, they help with organization. So just keeping your library of content organized in a way that makes sense to you. These are just examples. Another thing about tags is they're sort of flexible, and that they're not sort of flexible. They are flexible, so they can take on meaning that's meaningful to you, which is a really silly way to say that, but they're very customizable in that way. The other or another aspect of them is sort of workflow oriented. You can use them to automatically assign work to people based on the fund type or maybe a certain stakeholder, like the officer, can be included in downstream workflow. So those are good ways to use tags. But really, alignment is what tags are all about. So as these stories come in, scholarship, is a perfect example. You apply that fund ID, and when you go to publish with the Mythos publishing tools, that's how Mythos knows to align that story to the donors of that fund. So that's really the way that Mythos connects all the dots here.
About the survey.
Yes.
If it's sent to a dean, can you forward it to other people because the dean is not going to answer all of the surveys?
So yeah, you can set up these surveys to be collaborative. So if you know the team of people, you can invite all of them from the get-go. But if you don't, you can invite that dean, and then they can invite their team in to collaborate on the survey and get it in. And that's a good point. Another sort of goal of our survey tool is to help you well, I already said to help you get the most stories, but also help you get the best stories, and that kind of is a good way to do that, right? Because they know, sometimes the team knows better than the dean may know about some of that, so.
So once you get your responses in from the survey, you turn them all into stories. And this is where you're really editing things. So this is where we used to do our work in Word documents, but now we're managing everything within the Story Manager spot. We use a number of different things to move our different stories through our process. So we have first reviewer, second reviewer on each of the stories, and then we use the status of first review needed, second review needed, final review needed, and then finally approved. And the first reviewer, just to kind of give you an idea of how we use that, the first reviewer will change it from first review needed to second review needed, the second reviewer goes in, changes it to final review, and then the first reviewer goes back in. And so instead of sending emails across, they can actually search by, or I guess I should click along to show these things. They can actually search by by the tag and also by the status, so that they can find everything that's on their plate that they should be doing at that time and where it is in the process.
And can I just add, so for those in the back that maybe can't see it, so this was somebody assigning those statuses. Those are customizable, so you can base them on your workflow. So you can tailor them on your team and how you want to move these things through. This was assignment to someone on the team, right, based on whatever needs to happen with the story. And then this last part was, these are all the tags. And if we go, actually, let's go back real quick. Mm-hmm. So all the tags are visible on each story. And you can search, directly from the search bar, but we also have an advanced search that allows you to combine keyword, tags, assignment, statuses. All your statuses are viewable. So it's a great workflow tool, and we've got even bulk options where you can do a search, select all the search results, and apply, all of them in some status, or assign them to someone, or apply a tag or things, using the tags you talked about. So. Mm-hmm.
So when you're actually in the story, this is what it looks like when you're going through and editing it. So my team, as they edit them, they may use the notes feature, which is up on the top right. You can see there to kind of share information back and forth between the two different reviewers as they're going through and say, I found this on here, what do you think about it? And the next one might respond. You can also search by stories that have notes on them. And at this time, you can also tag things, like as it's doing right now. We tag things, for instance, if we find a really good narrative that we want to find again later, we'll tag it. Or if we need something that needs extra review because we're not sure it's okay to share with a donor, that we'll tag that, and then we can search by these in bulk later to review them all at one point in time. Another thing we do as part of the editing process too is looking at photos. So the photos are on the media tab, which was on, you can see it on here. Hang on, I'll do it real. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, you can see it on here. The media tab, that's where you would see photos or videos that came in. And at this, we have cropping tools that are set up to reflect the spaces in our templates where the photos actually fit. So this is the time we look at it, make sure the photo looks okay, that we're okay with using it, it's not like blurry or something weird. And then we'll crop it so it'll fit in our template, and that's the part we do that as well.
And one other thing to mention about media, you can collect video and files through the survey tool. And the video recording is very nice. They get full screen recording, and you can even supply a script to them. So as they're recording, you can give them some guidance, and that can be data driven, so you can really give them context as they're doing that recording, because we all know how hard it is to be on, record yourself on video. At least I do.
And then a really great thing about the Story Manager is that you can search for things later. So one thing we never really had a good grasp on is where we are in our progress in editing things. And now I can go in and search by professorship reports and first review needed and see this is how many are left in first review. Or look and I can do multiple things and just search and just make sure that we're on track, that we're moving things through our process, which we were never able to do before. And then we're also being able at this point in time to find those stories that we tagged with extra review or excellent narrative, pull them all up and be able to easily find things when the annual fund's looking for a really great student to feature, we're able to come in here and be there we go. Or if we make a representative student spread for any donors where their scholarship student doesn't respond to our survey, so that they get at least a couple of good stories. So we'll go in here and look for those students again and be able to pull them up and be able to use them for a spread like that. So that's been really useful to us.
Okay, so
In-app notifications.
yep. So a relatively new feature that we released over the summer is in-app notifications. So obviously the workflow is important, but knowing what you need to work on also is helpful. So when things are assigned or statuses are changed, I guess that's the only thing we have there, but you get a little panel with basically a to-do list of all the things that are assigned to you. So that's just an extension of those workflow tools.
So when you move to the create space, this is where we get into the collation of donor packets, and when you're pulling all those reports together in one place. The first thing we do in this process is work with Andrea on building our templates and updating our templates in the background. So this is when we tell Mythos, this is all the things that we want to make sure are happening within our templates. We're able to say, we want, if there's only a financial report on something and there's no impact report that's coming in, we want that financial report to go to the end of a packet because we don't want it like floating in the middle. Things like that are built into our template. I think I'm going into this. There we go. This is what our reports look like last year, just to give you an idea of what we ultimately ended up going, how they ultimately end up looking. They look much more polished than they used to look because we give our InDesign files directly to Mythos where they build the templates into the system, so they look like they actually came out of InDesign, even though we're not going into InDesign and like formatting things in there anymore. The system is really doing that for us. Oh, this is another thing I wanted to mention, is just about the logic and show you a little bit of what the logic can also do for you. So these are two examples of a very similar report, but in one there's different photos than the other, and the text changes depending on where the photos are. So we build the template so that the text can move around depending on whether or not someone submits a photo, or if they want to use an author, or if they don't want to use an author, the text would move up and replace where that author is. We also use different types of variations, like some departments want to use a general department update, whereas others just want to report on funds. So that would change what the header would say for that specific fund, because we'd put like the name of the department if there's a general department update versus the name of the fund. So these are just some things that we build in the logic in the background of our template to help make it really flexible in what we're doing. We use this part of the process as a whole review as well. So while we're reviewing things in the reports and doing that whole thing up front, we also review all packets to make sure that they look okay to go to the donor, and we ultimately review them all before we send them to fundraisers as well, so they don't see anything like weird happening. So for instance, you'll see we might find a typo at this point in time. We're not reading everything word for word at this point in time, but if we do see a typo, it might be something we want to fix. Or we might note that like this photo is not the photo that should be appearing in this report. Or there might be a formatting issue that's happening. So in the case here, this sentence ends at a weird spot, and the rest of the sentence is just hanging out by itself on another page. A lot of the logic actually fixes that, so it like would just kind of put it on another page. But if there's like weird formatting like that, where it's just like, I don't really want that extra thing, you can go back and fix that. So you can't, I think the thing's missing on the background, but there's a button when you're reviewing the packet that will take you straight back to those stories that are making up this whole packet. And you can click on that button and it'll bring you back to the stories. And here you go, you can see it back in the editor. And you can go right in the editor, make the edits. So here it's showing you it's changing the typo for neurodegenerative diseases, and then it's getting rid of the end of that sentence that was hanging off on a second page. And then we'll go over to the media tab, and it looks like it's not showing up.
Click one more time.
One more? Well, take my word for it.
Yeah.
You go to the media tab and you switch out the photo, and then you save that story again. You can go back over to the packet, and there's a regenerate button, so I don't have to go running to Mark and say, can you regenerate this packet for me? I can just press the button and it makes the changes like magic.
It doesn't actually do that animation.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It says generating, dot. But so you can go, while you're editing, you can go in there and just make those changes right on the fly and regenerate that packet. And that's been really useful for my team. We used to track, and we still do for certain things, all of our edits that need to be made in packets within an Excel sheet, which is fine, but when you're like saying like a typo needs to be fixed in one report that we have to go back and fix, and that takes up so many rows of like this Excel sheet that someone else has to go back and fix later. We still use an Excel sheet for our workflow for editing packets, so we can double check things, validate the edits that are made, but it's not for typos anymore. It's for like, this report was missing, is the donor gonna be upset about it? That type of thing that we're tracking in the Excel sheet. So this is just a look at the space where we're really organizing our work and assigning it out. We actually are going through this process right now. And so it's been, one thing I just want to note is that you can assign that you can see, like it says, for those of you in the back, you might not be able to see, but it says assign to, so you can sign out packets in bulk. One thing that Andrea taught me the other day is that you can go in the data, and I was able to search for all of the people who are individual stewardship program donors and be able to sign those out specifically to people who work with those individual stewardship program donors in bulk. So I was able to say these 30 are Jacqueline's individuals, and I'm going to make sure they're assigned to Jacqueline. And so going through and being able to do that has been really helpful for us.
And I just want to highlight a few things to just point them out. So you notice this says synced. As you're going through this process, someone might be working on story content in the story manager, and maybe they make an edit to a story that's in multiple reports. This will look for that and tell you when the story's out of sync, so that you know you might need to re-review that report. We also, we know, just because we've been doing this a long time, that all teams kind of have different ways of wanting to go through this process. So this is a kind of a separate manager. You can set your own statuses here. You can customize your own statuses for this part of the workflow. It can be the same if you want it to be, but it can also be different. You know, a lot of times, so one of our philosophies is to separate the content from the display of, you know, the presentation of all that content. That happens through the templates. So Katie was showing that example where there was a misspelling. You know, theoretically, you're catching that in the story manager before you get to this stage, but you know, that goes to the flexibility of Mythos. If you want to do more of that here, I mean, it just depends on how you want to organize it. So we're very flexible that way. And you even have notes and things here as well, and you have all those same tools as in the story manager, but they're specific to this part of the workflow, including advanced search, and you can have saved searches. So if you have common workflow scenarios, you can have those just, you know, one-click access to those.
Yeah, it's the same thing too with like tracking progress on this, that we're able to see like how far along are we in getting through these and improving them, making sure we're staying on track with the goals, the deadlines we've set for ourselves to make sure they're done on time. Yes?
So you're a student that receives multiple awards. Do they fill out multiple acknowledgements, or do they can they fill out one that can be used for all of their awards?
Can I take that?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can do it either way. So if through the data, if you have them do it once, it'll apply all the relevant tags, all the funds. But you can also do that multi-response approach and then have them do a separate one if it's unique enough that a separate response. So yeah, just goes to the flexibility again that we try to give around all this.
Anything, well, we can always have more questions at the end if you want to move on to the publishing part.
Okay, so I just want to quickly talk about our dynamic donor sites, part of our publishing tools. Katie's not using that yet. A lot of our customers are. And they're really great because you can use the same data and basically that same manager, same process within Mythos, but you're producing websites instead of PDFs. And we have a bridge between the two. So if you are early in your move to digital and you're still more focused on PDF delivery or print delivery and you want to move online, you can marry those PDFs to a website and distribute them that way, or you can go full web-based. This is just an example. Obviously, Mythos University is not real, even though we have great sweatshirts that make it look real. And the whole idea here is that you have a lot of control over this experience. It is data-driven. So, this might be a video directly to a high-dollar donor from the president that you collected through a survey that has all the list of donors that he needs to give his videos for, right? Or it could be a more general one based on that area of funding, however you want to do that. So you can highlight specific funds, like maybe their primary scholarship fund. But then you can also give access to other, oh, that went quick, but there are categories that you can control there. So if they are giving to multiple areas, you have one homepage. So we call that the donor homepage for that reason. It's one place for them to access all of that giving, all those giving stories that matter so much to them. And of course, this probably goes without needing to be said, but you can do raw financial data and turn it into tables like this, but also graphs if you want to display graphs in that way. So. And I mentioned direct mail, but that publisher, we call this the Mythos publisher that does all that work, can output those PDFs, those websites, or direct mail. And the direct mail is nice because as you do move to digital, not every donor engages right away. They may not be aware of it or ready for it, but we have this direct mail integration with a QR code that ties them to their specific site. So you can use that as a way to promote that engagement. It's really up to you how you use it, but that's probably the most common. And our sites are secured. We are SOC 2, so your data is very safe in Mythos. And we've made it easy. They don't need a login and password. It's just two-factor against their email. So they just have to put in their email address and then they get a link that lets them in. So it's very easy. You don't have to worry about helping donors with passwords. So that is Mythos. Oh yeah, you were going to talk about print.
Oh yeah, print.
Yeah.
So we send 75% of our reports out via digital delivery. They're still PDF, but they're digital. But about 25% are still getting printed. So that's like organizations where we just, they don't have access into our homegrown portal yet, or people where we don't have their email addresses. Before last year, so last year was the first year we printed with Mythos in 2023. Before that, we were using a local vendor, which was fine, but they didn't understand what we were doing. And so it took so much quality control on our end that it made the process super onerous, and you guys are nodding, so I feel like you went through the same thing. What we had to do was like take every packet that was like 3 pages long, 4 pages long, and make them in these lengthy PDFs and compare it to the Excel so that you're making sure all the addresses are right and they're in the same order. And it still got messed up, to be honest with you, one year. So that would take us probably at least 2 days of our entire staff like going through this and making sure everything was okay. When we moved to Mythos, we made a campaign for all the ones that needed a campaign, is what you call those like template groups over there. We made one that was just for those we get mailed, and then I just said, hey Andrea, these are ready to be mailed. And then they just did it because they knew what we were doing. Which was awesome. And this is what it ended up looking like, which was also so much better than what it used to be. We had folders with like loose leaf papers, and they did it saddle stitch, so they come as booklets. And I think they're just such a nice end product. And I'm gonna say the anecdote, even though I didn't ask Mark about it, is that when I showed Mark this, he was like, we cannot show the fundraisers this because they're gonna make us go back to print. Yes, that's valid. So it's just been like a really great experience printing with you guys.
And one other thing I wanted to highlight, because it's a strategy we've seen work really well with that QR code integration that I mentioned. If you are doing print still and you want to move online, doing your first campaign or year with us, you can integrate those QR codes, maybe have some communication about your going online, right, next year, but do both, right? So in that first year, they get that print, but they also get that site, and then that's a good way then for that subsequent year, maybe you use that direct mailer to complement that full digital campaign at that point. So just ways you can employ Mythos. And this next slide we're gonna ignore because it's not supposed to be there. And then lastly, as you are, okay, we skipped a video, but we have integrated email to send those out to your donors. We're also gonna have texting very soon. Texting is coming out any day now on our surveys for students, because we think that's the priority. But we're also gonna be adding it to our sites very soon, so you can do that for donors. And this screen is showing a dashboard of what we call Mythos Insights, and it is the donor's engagement with those sites. So as you send these out, you can see where they came from, whether it was that direct mail piece or that print report that I talked about. You can see their engagement with videos, how much of the video they watched, how much time they got through, all of those key metrics, number of visits, last time they visited. Obviously that informs maybe whether you need to use that direct mail, but it could also inform the officer that is responsible kind of following up and when they should, and maybe what stories the person looked at so they could mention that or something like that. So just a lot of great data that obviously everybody is looking for.